if you've ever actually quit your corporate job or if you've seriously thought about it. I know sometimes this isn't the or this may not be the environment to do it now, but I know people still have thoughts to become entrepreneurs and whatnot. So we'd love to hear that in the chat. And welcome. Today we have Catalina on. She's going to be explaining quitting her corporate job and how she traveled the world solo for 2 years after that. If you don't know me, I'm Leah, LA in Flight on all your social media. I am the LA chapter leader and an event producer and a podcast creator and host. So welcome. And you are at a Nomadic Network event. So these are all virtual for now. They used to be in person, and then COVID-19 struck us. So we're doing them online, but the content is incredible. If you've seen our roster of events or if you've attended past ones, like Erica is doing so well on grabbing guests. So we're excited to have you. Yeah, so I see all your responses rolling in. Thank you. A few housekeeping rules before we get started. We're going to keep everyone on mute. And any questions you have after the presentation or during the presentation, drop the questions in the chat. We'll get them answered at the Q&A, which will be after Catalina's presentation. And so a little bit about Catalina. She is a super passionate world traveler. She's a blogger. She's a photographer. She's really involved in her volunteer activities as well. She's traveled to 54 countries. She's always planning her next adventure. Her and I met up a few weeks ago, and her energy was just radiating. She makes me love Los Angeles. And she traveled the world solo for 2 years after quitting her corporate job. And then when she came back, she transitioned into a career as a tour director. So welcome, Catalina, and I'll let you go ahead and take it away.
Thank you, Leah, for that presentation. Let me share my desktop here. And here we go. Okay, so, and let me change my screen here. Okay, great. Are you guys hearing me okay? All good? Okay. So thank you, Leah, again for that introduction. And thank you all for taking this time out to listen to my presentation. I'm just extremely excited and thankful to Erica and the Nomadic Network for having me here today to present. And I hope that through my slides and my stories, you will find some inspiration and hopefully some good takeaways that you can use to create your own adventures. So let's get started. Oh, I am unable to, oh, there we go. You know what, give me 1 second because I am not able to do the screens. Okay, I think I am now. Okay, cool. So a little bit about me and what qualifies me to talk about travel here today. So my love for travel began when I migrated to the US at 13 with my family. I had to learn a new language, a new culture, a new way of life. And this experience not only showed me what I was capable of, but it sparked a huge interest in discovering what else the world had to offer out there. So I took my first solo adventure at 21 when I moved to Paris right after college, where I lived for almost a year. And following that time, I just kept traveling to a different destination in the US and a different country every year. And right before my 40th birthday, I decided to just go big and leave everything behind and go travel around the world for 2 years. So at the beginning, I thought it would be 1 year only, but I managed my budget so well that it ended up being 2 years. So as Leah mentioned, I've been to 54 countries in 6 continents, and I'm always planning my next adventure. My round the world trip experience totally inspired me to make a switch into a career in travel and tourism. So last year I got certified as a tour director / guide by ITMI. And so far I've had the chance to work for companies like G Adventures and as a freelancer for other companies that you can see on the slide. And I'm currently on standby to work as an adventure guide for Adventures by Disney. Okay, there we go. I'm having a hard time changing the slides. So what I'll cover today, so some of my thoughts why you guys might be here today is, you know, you're addicted to travel and just want to hear every story everybody has to tell you about it. You love the TNN events like I do. I've been to almost all of them. You've thought about doing a long-term trip but just are not sure how to even begin, or you're preparing for one and just want to see how I prepare for mine. So this is not a step-by-step guide. You can find great resources online for that, and books like How to Travel the World on $50 a Day by Nomadic Matt. I'm sure you've heard of him. But my focus today is rather on sharing the why behind my adventures, sort of the purpose that drove me to do this trip. But most importantly, again, I hope that you get some inspiration and encouragement to go and live out your dreams, whatever those may be. So this really resonates with me. There is no way I was born to just pay bills and die. This quote, you know, a little extreme, but this is seriously how I felt, and what made me kind of get moving forward on my planning my round the world trip. I just remember working for 10 hours a day at my corporate job, you know, coming home to have dinner, a little stressed out, watch some TV, try to relax a little bit before going to bed, and having to do it all over again the next day. And it was just terrifying me. Like at one point, I felt like nothing could fill this void that I was feeling inside. Like no cool job title, no check, you know, no big paycheck, no furniture that I could buy, you know, at IKEA, my favorite place, my big apartment, whatever it was that I could buy, like material things just weren't filling me at the time. And I also felt like I was stagnant in my own growth. Like I was sort of avoiding a big part of me, which is the explorer in me. So this is when I decided, you know what, my career can wait. Let's do this. So why travel the world? So why did I decide to quit a career of almost 18 years, right before my 40th birthday, get rid of all my belongings, say goodbye to every one of my loved ones, and, you know, a lot of people to run away, like to go wander around the world. A lot of people might categorize it as a midlife crisis, maybe so. I like to call it more as a life reassessment. Although my life was going pretty well at the time, the explorer in me was longing to get out and do just tons of travel. You know, the 2-week vacation, you know, that you get in corporate America annually just wasn't cutting it anymore. So, you know, I just always wanted to travel more, never want to come home from these vacations. So for 10 years, I've been dreaming about realizing this dream. But, you know, when you think about how to time such a drastic change, right, it's just impossible. Like life just keeps happening. Like my sister, you know, whenever I thought, okay, this is it, I'm ready to take off this year, my sister would have a baby, or I got a promotion at work. Or, you know, I bought a place and I couldn't rent it for 3 years because I was in an FHA loan, things like that. So in other words, life keeps happening and there's no way you're going to be able to time this right. You have to just kind of make the decision and go. You know, obviously prepare and then go. A big reason was to live a life less ordinary, just kind of get out of that normal day-to-day routine, just really live some adventurous stuff. I heard someone say once on a podcast, A Traveler of 10 Years, they said, I don't think travel is addictive. I think seeking adventures and newness is what's addictive, and travel is sort of the tool to get there. So this totally describes me. So I'm also an anxious person and sort of a warrior by nature. And I was always, you know, like stuck in a life where I constantly reassess the past or thinking about planning the future, right? So what's coming next? What are my goals in life? How am I going to achieve them? What's my to-do list? Where am I in, you know, 1 year, 3 years, 5 years? It was just exhausting. So for once, I saw this trip as kind of giving me permission to live fully in the present moment only. So leave everything behind. Don't worry about the future. Just stay in the present. Courage was a big one as well. But this was a chance also for me to kind of face some of those big fears that had been with me all my life. You know, I would be able to create the time and the space to do it. And then education, get that live education. So go see things for myself. So I remember Anthony Bourdain and Samantha Brown, some people that I really admired, you know, on TV, just thinking like every time I watch their shows, saying, why do I have to settle for, you know, seeing things through their eyes? Why can't I go see it for myself? You know, if they can do it, why not me? So I don't know if you've ever heard of the concept of Gemba, which is the Japanese term for the actual place. So this is, in other words, going to see things for yourself at the place of action, sort of going to the source. So that's exactly what my trip would be too. Going to all these places that I've always heard of just to see it for myself and kind of form my own opinions. I was also attracted to the, a minimalist lifestyle. I've never been too materialistic, so this was easy for me to detach from things. But I wanted to see if I could really live out of a small backpack for a year or more. And then, of course, seek those experiences that I always thought of. So, okay, travel the world, great, but why do it solo? So a lot of you guys that might have traveled alone, you can relate to this, the sense of adventure that you get, the thrill that comes to with discovering new places for the first time, the pride that you generate, from having to figure things out on your own, that's just priceless. I also wanted to step out of my comfort zone and go experience things that weren't necessarily feeling safe for me. Different situations that were risky, but I wanted to prove myself that I could do them. Also, no compromising. This might sound a little selfish, but hey, so be it. Having the flexibility and the freedom to do what you want, when you want, and how you want is just amazing. So not having to stick to an itinerary and not having to compromise on certain things because someone is there with you. It just kind of opens up, creates the space for those spontaneous experiences that you want to come your way. Also to build confidence, you don't know how you'll react to different situations until you're put in the middle of them. And, as you forge ahead on your travel path, you will run into so many obstacles. And it's just true because it's like life. It has its ups and downs. So this is a great opportunity to find out what you're really made of, right? And then, having the time for that inner reflection and self-discovery that we all need once in a while, kind of allowing yourself that time to sort of create in an empty space. Many times during a solo trip, you will be alone with your thoughts, and whatever you find, that whatever you're leaving behind, so kind of any emotional baggage, any issues, any feelings, it's not going to stay behind. It'll stay with you. You've heard of the saying, wherever you go, there you are. And so you'll have plenty of opportunities to kind of work through those feelings, those demons that may come out. And just, as you embark on different adventures, you start to learn what you like, what you don't like, and discover really how brave and resilient you can be. So on the next few slides, I want to share some of my purposes, or my big purpose behind taking this trip, sort of how I answer my big whys that I mentioned at the beginning. So for example, when I think of adventure and living in the present, this was huge for me. And at the top of the list of places that I wanted to see was Nepal. So specifically the Himalayas, just this amazing, stunning range, as you can see on the pictures, of snow-capped mountains, including the highest peak in the world, Everest. So yeah, I had the opportunity to do some multi-day treks over there and stay at what they call tea houses or homestays to share with the families and buy services like food, Wi-Fi, showers, things like that. So I did the Everest Base Camp trek, combined it with the Gokyo Lakes region, and later on I did the Annapurna circuit. So yeah, when it comes to fulfilling this desire for adventure and also living in the moment, nothing describes it better to me than taking these long treks. Nature just fills me in a way that nothing else can. And the challenge of being in these narrow trails, surrounded by amazing scenery, hiking, the exertion, the physical exertion that is created in high altitude, all of this really makes you kind of focus in the moment and practice that mindfulness, that I was seeking. The best education I have received was through travel. By the way, I love quotes, if you haven't noticed by now. So for my 40th birthday, I asked my mom and my stepdad to join me in the Middle East, and I chose Israel because I thought it'd be a nice gift for all of us. We grew up as Catholics in Colombia, and it was great to just learn everything kind of Jesus related, everything related to his life and death. And so Israel was a great place to do this, and not only for that, but also, again, to do that gamba and learn from the source about Israel and the Palestinian, conflict, and kind of make our own opinions about the subject. It was also a great opportunity for me to connect with my mom in a different way outside of the regular routine mother-daughter regular relationship. And it was great to see how she adapted to her new environment, to maybe uncomfortable situations that she was in. she hadn't been exposed to before, and how she grew as an independent traveler herself, and also her husband. So it was a great opportunity for that. Okay, you cannot swim for new horizons until you have the courage to lose the sight of the shore. So this one is all about practicing courage. So I've been afraid of water ever since I was little. I remember not being able to float, or not being able to accept that I could float like a normal human being in water until I was 9. So this trip was a big opportunity for me to face that fear head on. It was like one of the biggest fears that I've always had, like this hate relationship, or this love-hate sort of with like deep water. So I thought that the ultimate test to conquer this fear would be to become certified as an open water diver. I had previously tried in Colorado 15 years before, but I failed miserably because I couldn't do the one skill where you take off the mask and put it back on, like 3 meters under. Yeah, I see Leah going crazy over there. Yeah, it's very difficult. And so when I was in Jordan, I decided, okay, I'm gonna do this. I can do it, you know. So I found a family-owned resort right on the Red Sea, really nice, that allowed me to get the personal attention that I needed to kind of get comfortable with water. And it was just, you know, getting that certification. You see me on the picture there, and then doing my first dive, you know, as a certified new diver was incredible, and one of the most proud moments of my life. Life always begins with one step outside of your comfort zone. So this trip meant the chance also to explore cultures that were very different than mine. China, I got to say, is an incredible country with tons of natural beauty. But to be honest, it was a bit uncomfortable for me at times. You know, the more I traveled inland, the more I felt unwelcome in a way, and difficult to communicate with people, because a lot of people outside of the big cities don't speak English. So I remember just getting so lost trying to find my accommodations at different times. You know, my Maps.me app that I used wasn't working very well, and trying to reach out to taxi drivers, and they would just plain refuse service. And even people on the streets would just kind of wave me off to go away. And I never understood why. I just felt alone and kind of unwanted by this whole country. But I knew that, you know, I was just too in my head, and I thought, okay, this is why I'm traveling, to see different cultures. So I have to stick it out, even if it feels uncomfortable. So I was determined, right, to get to know, you know, the Chinese and their culture. So what I did, and this is going to seem crazy, but I decided to go on a tour that was led only in Chinese in the busiest part of the Chinese tourist season. Luckily, early on the trip, I was adopted by this really cute family that you see on the photos. It was a 19-year-old girl that could speak a little bit of English, thankfully, and her mother and aunt, and they just kind of took me in as their own family. So yeah, this helped me tremendously to kind of change my perspective on my whole experience in China and interacting with the Chinese. Yeah, so after that, I became more tolerant and kind of more open. It was like a great reminder to be open to things that are so different than what we know at home. And later from a Chinese friend that I met on another part of China, she explained to me that it wasn't that they were trying to be rude to me or ignore me. It was that it was all about saving face for them. So if they couldn't feel like they could help me in my language, then they rather not try at all. And so, you know, it just opened up my mind in many ways. Collect moments, not things. So this is huge for me, just the experiences in general. So what do you want to get out of your trip? You know, for me, this has been my lifelong motto, collecting moments. So yeah, when it came to eating and sleeping, I was willing to compromise on my budget. So kind of like, you know, go out for the lower side of things. But when it came to finding these experiences that I've always dreamt of, I was not willing to compromise on the budget. So whatever it took, I would just do it. So one of those experiences was going to Mongolia, to the Altai region, which is in the border with Kazakhstan, to find the eagle hunters and to just experience going out into the high mountains to hunt with them. So I went to Ulaanbaatar, the capital in Mongolia, and asked around. I tried every tour agency, and everybody was like, no, you're too late. The season is over. It's too cold out there. No homestay will take you. but I wouldn't give up on my dreams. So I kept searching on the internet until I found this man that owns his own business. And even though he charged an arm and a leg for one of these trips, he decided to accommodate to my budget because I convinced him that it was just something I really had to do. Anyway, the experience was incredible, as you can see. So I went hunting with them. It was incredible. Yeah, so taking that time for self-reflection. So you can read the quote there. It's a little long, but after 9 months on the road, I began to worry a lot about what I would do when I got back to the US. And I say 9 months because I thought I would only stay a year at first, but then it turned into 2 years. So yeah, a lot of things were changing for me inside me, and I knew that I couldn't go back to my old routine. So I found myself getting anxious again and just kind of, you know, focusing on the future too much. And so, you know, I came to the point where I was like, stop. This is all about practicing mindfulness, living in the moment, living in the present. So I started to seek new experiences that would allow me to practice meditation, which is a great way to kind of, you know, bring you back to the moment. And, you know, so I found a Zen retreat in India, which I did for a few days. And then I challenged myself to 10 days of silent meditation in Cambodia. And then the one you see on the photo here was taking 3 weeks to train in Kung Fu with real Kung Fu masters from the Shaolin temple. And also in 2 different kinds, Shaolin and Wudang. And so I stayed with them and practiced the Zen way of life, which is very connected to Kung Fu. We had a vegan diet. We followed like just a really calm and wonderful lifestyle, but also really hard training. So it was just an incredible experience. So the moral of the story with this one is that life on the road will get hard, you guys. You will feel exhausted at different times. And it is extremely important that you take the time out to stop and listen to yourself and seek those opportunities and experiences that will allow you time to reflect on your journey and all of those feelings that you may be experiencing. Okay, and challenges. Okay, yes, they will come your way. If you're on a long-term trip, you know, it's like life. It has its ups and downs. So challenges, like the quote says, is what makes life interesting, and overcoming them, you know, gives them meaning. So in Cambodia, I have a story that Leah knows well. I told it to her the other day. In Cambodia, so I had just gotten out of my 10-day silence retreat, meditation retreat, and I got comfortable, and I trusted a taxi driver to convince me to put my small backpack with all of my electronics and my documents and my money in the back, in the trunk. Because, you know, he said, oh, it's too crowded in there. We have a long journey ahead to reach the Thai border, so you have to do this. And, you know, I thought, you know, I'm just too paranoid. I'm going to give him the bag, you know, and I was thinking, I'm coming out of this retreat thinking everybody's great out there. So against my better judgment and seriously, my gut instinct at the time was telling me that this guy was up to no good, but I just ignored it and went with it. So to make a very long story short, the driver ended up giving my bag away. At one of the stops, they took it out of the trunk and they gave it away. So when I found out, I found a way to stay with the taxi driver. And we ended up at the police station. And for the next 2.5 days, we dealt with very corrupt cops that demanded a bribe to do their jobs and to speak to him even and try to get my stuff back. In summary, I lost everything but my clothes. And thankfully, I had a money belt. So I highly recommend this, a money belt with my US passport, because I lost my Colombian passport. And I had some backup credit cards. So that's what saved me. But the moral of this story is shit will happen out there. And I learned to accept at one point, even though this was a really hard lesson on detachment, I learned to accept that it was just part of the experience and something that I just had to go through. So here on the pictures, these are my friends from the Vipassana retreat. In the middle is my friend Tiffany, who kind of stuck with me through the whole ordeal. And then there's the corrupt cops on the right and my friend. I just snuck that photo in. All right, so now the fun part on how I would recommend to prepare for such a long journey. Number 1, commit to doing your trip. You know, before you even begin all the planning, like what is it that is gonna take you to commit to this trip 100%? So for me, it was the action of simply buying a non-refundable one-way ticket to my first destination. I just felt attached in that way. get organized, a huge one. So I say make a list. So, take a look at all of the things that you need to put on this list, from the moment you decide to go on your trip until the moment you actually get on that airplane. Like, what is it all that I have to do to actually make this happen? So for me, I didn't get rid of my place back in LA, so finding a tenant. I had to find storage for my stuff. I had to temporarily move into a furnished apartment. I had to set a date to quit my job. I also had to figure out, what kind of travel insurance I want to buy, the visas that I will need throughout the countries that I know for sure I'm going to visit, the vaccines that are required. How many pages do I have on my passport that are empty? Like, we don't think of all these things, but there's so much to plan out there. Also, unless you plan to work during your trip, which I didn't, but some of you might, it's important that you figure out your budget that will allow you to travel the way that you want for as long as you want and see the places that you want. So again, compare your savings. Where am I today, when you decide to do the trip, and where do I want to be before I get on that airplane? So what's the gap between those two, and how am I going to close that gap? So do I need to make more income somehow? Do I need to ask for more hours at work? Do I need to work as a freelancer? Whatever it is. And then what are your expenses? And I'm sure you can find ways to cut them down, like get rid of the Starbucks stop every morning, right? Research and inspiration is a huge one, you guys. As committed as you think you feel to the trip, things and people will get in your way during the preparation moment. So it's very important that you stay motivated. And so find blogs of people that have done it or are currently doing it. Nomadic Matt comes to mind, podcasts out there on travel. So like whenever I felt like I was crazy for doing this, or I had a good day at work and it's like, no, why am I quitting? Or I doubted myself in any way, a quick episode of Rolf Potts on vagabonding did the trick to get me right back on track. Also rely on good friends and family that support your dream. Like, stay away from the naysayers, the negative ones that will kind of try to drag you down and tell you that you can't have all the fun in life, right? Because they can't do it. So yeah, other sources that are incredible besides Nomadic Matt, that I used at the time. Obviously there's newer ones now, like Leah's podcast. But yeah, Expert Vagabond was a huge one for me. Legal Nomads, where sidewalks end, and the show Departures. I think it's still on Netflix, but find it even on YouTube. And budgeting during your trip. So think of all the expenses that will come during your trip and how to budget for those, obviously before you take off, so you don't run out of money. So like, I'm a nerd and I kept Excels going for a while, and until I got robbed of everything and I didn't back them up. Sorry to say. But yeah, every night before bed, I would just kind of make a quick estimate of all my expenses during the day and plug them in, categorized, so I would know where my money was going. It was also a way for me to keep track of, okay, this is the money I have in the bank. This is how much I've been spending. Keep track of my future expenses that I have at home, if you leave things back at home that you need to pay for, and just kind of make the Excel do the work so that you know where you are at all times. And this is how I figured out, after not having spent as much as I thought I would spend, that I could go for another year, believe it or not. So yeah, this pie chart I actually borrowed from a friend, Andrea Hart's Traveling, another great website. She had a very similar travel style than mine, and we actually ended up spending the same amount per year, when we compare notes. So I decided to use her pie chart because, again, I lost all my Excels. So yeah, it came out to about $18,000 per year, roughly $50 per day. Again, going back to Nomadic Matt's book, you can definitely stay within that budget. And then there's a little picture of my backpack, which you could even get away with less than 46 liters, you guys. Packing for the trip, and trust me, we tend to overpack. So whenever you think that you've packed for the trip, go back and take about half of it out. Because trust me, people out there in the world will need the same things that you need. So don't like overpack on the shampoo or the socks or the underwear or any products like that you may need out there. You will find it, and it's even better to buy it in the local markets because you will be supporting those local economies. Also, you know, if you're going to do a lot of outdoor activities like I did, try to pack light clothes that you can kind of layer, and maybe a jacket. Think of things that will make you feel comfortable, like walking shoes and flip-flops, very basics like that. But if you find that as you change from country to country, the weather changes, the climate changes, and you need different clothes, don't even worry about packing for it all. Find it again in local flea markets. That's what I did when I went into Nepal. And then after I didn't need those clothes anymore, I just donated them back to the community. And so it's a great way, again, to help locally. Again, don't overpack, trust me on this one. So what are some of my biggest lessons that I learned during this trip? So again, you can always buy it at destination. Don't plan too much, just, you know, go with the flow, like be open to new experiences. Just having a high sort of overall idea of what you want to get out of your trip, but then let experiences sort of come to you. Go with the flow. Splurge whenever necessary. Like I said, some experiences were more important for me than focusing on a good hotel, you know. So I splurged when it came to those things, like my trip in Mongolia, or, you know, finding a great camping trip on the Great Wall of China, things like that. Quality over quantity. Definitely, it's not a check-off list, you guys. You know, don't try to see everything in the one city or the one country. Look for those 2 or 3 places that really catch your attention, depending on what you're seeking out of your trip, and focus on those, and try to, you know, again, live in the moment as much as you can, and just take your time, you know, stay 1, 2 months, 3 months, it doesn't matter, just make it worth it for you. Follow your instinct. Again, don't be dumb like me and get robbed in Cambodia. Say yes often to all experiences if you can. Accept change at all times. You know, this is a constant in life. No matter what you're doing and where you are, accept change. And remember that this is the reason why you're taking the trip in the first place, to receive change, you know. Take breaks as needed. Take the time out when your body and your mind are asking for it and demanding it. You will feel travel fatigue at one point, and that's just when you feel no excitement for anything that is in front of you. It could be the most spectacular thing like the Eiffel Tower or even the Himalayas, and you will not enjoy it because you're tired. So just listen to your body and stop. Don't sweat the small stuff. It's just not worth it. Mix with the locals. You know, the best adventures come when you mix with the local people. And a great way to do this, if you're kind of a shy person and you don't know how to strike up a conversation with someone on the streets, go to a restaurant, go to a cooking class. You will always meet locals that way. And overall, this is number 1 lesson, no matter what, in the world, in travel, in whatever, just be respectful and kind. The reason why you're traveling is because you want to learn about differences in the world, and don't expect to find exactly how you grew up and how you live back at home in those places. Okay, so now I got to do a shout out to my solo traveler women. You're out there, I see you. Actually, I don't see everybody's hands, but I'm sure Leah is seeing all of you. So yeah, I commend you for being brave and amazing and badass like I am. So keep it up. So yeah, you know, when I think back to some sort of challenging moments that I had as, traveling as a woman, you know, it just makes me think that it's just not fair, but it is a sad reality that travel will always feel different and will pose harder challenges at many times for women than it does for men. And I hate to say this, but it's been my experience, and I've heard it from other women, especially after you reach a certain age in a lot of traditional cultures where you're expected to be married and have children, and you know, they'll question all of that and they'll give you a hard time and they'll harass you. But these are only a few out there, right? So it's not going to be your entire time. Trust me, I was, again, traveling at 40 years old. And so these are some tips to kind of help you stay safe out there when you're feeling like you're being harassed or made feel uncomfortable in any way. So be confident, have your wits about you, never seem like the victim. Never be the weak one, even if you have to fake it, right? Travel during the day if the place seems unfriendly. Like when I was in Nairobi, I knew better than to wander around in the streets in the dark. So if I didn't have friends to go out with, then I would just keep my sightseeing for the day. dress appropriately to respect local customs, just out of courtesy, and to avoid a lot of harassment that is just unnecessary from men and, you know, very traditional places out there. Leave breadcrumbs. Shout out to my sister. She's always telling me this, like, tell me where you're going. So during such a long trip, it's hard to, you know, be texting your mom or your loved ones back at home at all minute, you know, every minute. But if you, you know, and social media obviously keeps track of you, so they'll know where you are. But if you're going off the grid for a few days to go into the Sahara Desert, you know, to camp with some strangers like I did, then, you know, send a link of like maybe the agency that you booked your travel with, so that at least your mom knows where to start looking for you if something should go wrong, you know, you never know. Seek privacy. This is especially for like trains in countries like India, Malaysia, you know, places like that come to mind. They have, so spend a little bit more money to get the bunks with the curtains on the trains. That really helps to keep, you know, privacy. Seek for the, you know, take advantage of the female only cars. These exist, I've seen them in Mexico, Malaysia, and India. Don't be afraid to confront your enemy. You know, it happened to me. You see a guy following you down the street, you realize you're going toward like a dead end or something where he could really, you know, mess with you, whatever. I would just turn around, look at him straight in the eyes and say, what do you want from me, huh? How can I help you? What are you doing chasing me? And he would just like turn the other way and run away. So don't be afraid. Like, never make yourself seem as a victim. And then take the business card from your accommodation with you. And this is just in case, you know, like for 2 years, you know, believe it or not, I never had a phone on me, a phone that had a SIM card. Like, I had no internet connection. So I heavily relied on apps where you can download things and use them offline, like Maps.me, for example. So I always kept a business card from whatever hostel, hotel, whatever, wherever I was, so that I would just give it to a driver if I couldn't find my way around. But overall, you guys, have fun, because the world is friendlier than you think. So again, this is not to scare you in any way, you know, solo women out there, or anybody that feels uncomfortable traveling solo. But this is just to keep in mind that, you know, bad stuff could happen out there, but if you make an effort, you'll probably avoid most of it. And again, the bad times, I can count them in this hand. The good times, I can't count them. They were just too many to remember. And then I just wanted to remind you, any of you out there that think, oh, I missed the boat, this is only when you're in your 20s, I'm too old. Remember, I did it at 40 and I'm still doing it and I can't stop. So, you know, travel gets better with age, I promise you. And you know what? You have no option but to believe me, because we're all aging. So if you're healthy enough, if you have the means, go follow your dreams. With maturity comes a lot of sort of greater appreciation for the places that you see, you know, as you travel around the world. You found your stride, you know what you like, you know what you don't like. So you seek experiences that really fill your soul. We make better choices as we mature as well. You know, we focus more on that conscientious travel that will help us make a good impact economically, you know, in the local areas that we visit. Also, things that affect the environment in a positive way, and wildlife and the such. Yeah, you're more immune to concerns of the world and what society thinks you should or shouldn't do. You know, just go live your dream. Like, being older is great. And then, yeah, life is short. Life is short. You know, it's too late when you die to live your dreams. So this is a big one that I always push with everybody. So yeah, as we get older, you know, you realize how fast just life can pass you by, how fast time goes. And so when you're ready, just take the leap and go and live your dreams. I can't say it enough. So to end it here, you guys, I am grateful for the privilege to travel. I know that not everybody is as lucky as I have been, as fortunate to have my health and the means to do this trip. And I work hard to never take this for granted. And seriously, nobody should. So take travel with respect, enjoy it, and just know that not everybody can do it. I hope that I have inspired you with maybe one of my stories and tips so that you can go and plan your own adventure and go live your dreams. I encourage you to definitely, no matter who you are, to travel solo at least once in your life. You would be surprised of how many things you can learn about yourself. And then again, seek experiences that will feed your soul. Do not travel for Instagram. Do not travel for anybody else's itinerary. Do it for you and seek what you want and not what someone is telling you you should seek. And with that, I thank you for your attention, and I'll hand it back to Leah for some questions. So I'll stop sharing, yeah? Okay.
Or if you want to leave it up for one more minute, Catalina, so people can get your info down, or here, we could just write your,
share it. Are you guys seeing it?
Here you go. Her gram handle, yeah. Wow, thank you so much. That was way more inspiration than I expected to receive on this gloomy Thursday morning. So wonderful. And we got so many good questions as expected.
Awesome.
And I grouped them actually. So thank you guys for putting your questions in the chat. You can keep on doing that. There's no stop to that. Catalina, do you want to answer questions about your round the world trip first or your tour guiding first?
I guess my round the world trip would be fine.
That makes sense. Chronological order. So, okay. Yep, absolutely. David had a ton of great questions. Here, I'll group some of them together. Do you have a permanent residential address here in LA? And how do you handle insurance? Some logistical questions first.
Yeah, sure. I usually use my sister's address in the US. Again, after doing this trip, I just became a nomad. I actually came back and ended up selling my apartment. And then as far as insurance, I usually use World Nomads. I've been able to get 2 claims paid, one of them being the robbery in Cambodia, and other medical issues that I ended up having after South Africa on a different trip. But yeah, I usually get travel insurance, and I highly, highly recommend it, you guys.
Yep. Great call. Great call. You never know what will happen. You always want to be prepared. You know, you hope for the best, but prepare for the worst.
Yeah, for sure.
So David also wanted to know well, I mean, you said you have tips for mixing with the locals, like taking a dance class, cooking class, any other unique ways that you yourself met locals, or any other funny stories on how you did?
Oh my God, there's so many. So one comes to mind. When I was in Indonesia, I was flying to Sumatra, and I was in line to get on the airplane, and this local Indonesian woman was just so intrigued by who I was and what the heck I was doing in Sumatra, because I guess they don't see a lot of, as many tourists as they see in places like Bali. So she just wanted to know all about me, and we were having a nice conversation, and before you know it, she invited me to her home. She had, and mind you guys, I was on a budget, so I didn't even know where I was staying the night, and I have a backpack, and all of a sudden I am like in a mansion, staying with like one of the richest families in the area, with my own room, with like a pool outside, and so things like that happen all the time when you just open up to locals. And when you just have a normal conversation, most people out there just want to help you and show you something about their city or their town, or invite you over for dinner or things like that. But I would say a big one to create those local experiences is do homestays. I am big on homestays. These days, so during my trip, I did a lot of booking.com to find hostels or even homestays. But nowadays I use a lot of Airbnb and just try to book a room in an occupied house. So where there's actually, the owners will be there, so that I have the experience to interact with them and learn about the culture.
That's so great. How exciting. That's really fun. Okay, so everyone, I did get your questions. I have them. I'm just going to go in an order that I think will make sense. So I'm going to skip around. So Danielle asked a great question, and then Erica linked an article to one of Nomadic Matt's, but I would love to hear your perspective. do you have any advice for a young person who's dreading having the mom, I'm leaving and don't really know where I'll be in a year from now conversation?
Yeah, so my mom, even if I'm 40 and now 44, my mom always thinks I'm her little baby. So I can relate to that feeling. I don't know, just, the best policy always in any situation is to be honest. Like, mom, this is a big dream that I've always had. I want to make sure that I fulfill it when it's right for me. So I'm young. I know you're afraid for me. It'll be my first experience out there, but this is something I got to do, and you just got to trust that you've raised me well to do it. But yeah, so I do have experience. Like when I went to Paris, I was 21 right out of college, and my mom was, feeling very uncomfortable with my decision. I didn't have much of a plan in Paris either. And she just had to, I just explained it well, what it was all about for me. And I think as long as they understand the purpose of why you're doing your trip and what you hope to get out of it, it's kind of like a sales pitch, to your own mom. I think that'll help.
Absolutely. I've done the same thing. I actually had PowerPoint presentations for my parents. And to be honest, I groomed my parents for a year before I left. Like I was living in Vegas at the time, and I'd invite them to Vegas. Like, let me take you to dinner. Also, I'm going to quit my job, and this is how I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
I would say also the hardest hitting conversations I had were with male friends that were like, this isn't going to work for you. Like, you're going to fail. Why? Like, you're quitting your career. And it was so hard. I was like, this is tough, especially from guys who think that this isn't going to work out for me. So there's a lot of tough conversations that need to be had. But thank you for your advice on that.
Yeah.
So, all right. So Rose, she is planning a round the world trip and wondering how much you booked before going as far as accommodations and flights. And if you booked those before you left for like the first 2 weeks or the first 3 months, and how did you space that out?
Yeah, so this is obviously based on comfort level, and I am very comfortable in unknown environments. I thrive in them. I love them. So I only booked my first 3 nights of accommodation in Bali, which is where I started my trip. Doesn't sound so, doesn't that sound so cliche? I started in Bali. But yeah, I just needed some beach time to unwind from my corporate America life. And yeah, I only booked 3 nights because I wanted to kind of chill for a while, get over the jet lag, and kind of get, my like sense of direction. But then after that, it was just whatever came my way, whatever felt right. So yeah, I didn't do a lot of planning. I didn't even book flights in advance because I wanted to do trains and road transportation as much as I could. And the way that I would recommend doing it, if you can, is to create a route that will allow you to do a lot of the road transportation or overland transportation versus taking flights, because flights can get expensive. Yeah, I didn't plan a lot. I just wanted this time for me to be very spontaneous, because when else in life do you have an opportunity to go with the flow and just do things as they feel right, So
Right.
not a lot of planning in my case.
Right. That's great. And so I have a question, and Dana has a really similar question. How long were you thinking about and then prepping for quitting your job, and how did you save up for 2 years worth of travel? Like, if you have specific things, like I literally didn't buy one piece of clothing for 6 months and then I saved hundreds of dollars that way. Like,
Yeah.
what specifics do you have?
So I think, okay, so I've been dreaming about it for 10 years, like I mentioned. It took me about, gosh, if I remember correctly, it was about 6 to 9 months, or maybe a year. Maybe a year, yeah, between the time I said, okay, this is it, I'm doing this no matter what, until I got on that airplane. And again, during that year, I kind of planned that budget and figure out where I was, where I want to be, how to close the gap, what expenses do I need to cut. Luckily, I'm very fortunate. I had a very nice, well-paying job. And so I was able to save money quickly and easy. But I did have to make a lot of changes. So like I got out of my mortgage. So I rented my place early, like 5 months before I even left, or 6, so that I could find a room with, in a house with roommates. Even though I was 40 and I wasn't used to having roommates, this would allow me to save a lot of money per month. Not only that, but like I've never been a big shopper, but whatever I felt like, I usually go to this restaurant that is like $50 a plate, no more. Now it's going to be all about just hanging out with friends, doing barbecues, going to see my family, simple things like that, going for hikes, the beach, things that will not break the bank, so that you can focus on putting, those $20, $30 away that you would have spent in any other day, put them in your piggy bank for that travel trip.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Great.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Okay, I want to do one good last question on the trip part and logistics, and then I want to get into your tour guide because they have to be cognizant of time here. So Rose wanted to know, what part of your budget did you try to spend the least on to be able to travel so long? So did you go cheap on hotels but not on food? Like, what did you prioritize and what did you bargain for?
Okay. Yeah. So a big one for me was food. So, and yes, I wouldn't consider myself a foodie, but I love food and trying the local stuff. And trust me, you will have the best food on the streets, from little local stalls, from the little alleyway in, the middle of Vietnam. Like, don't go to expensive restaurants. That'll save you so much money. Just eat on the streets with the locals, mingle, enjoy trying different kinds of food. If your stomach can handle it, just do it. And I think that's a huge way to save. The other one was, again, transportation. Stay away from the flights if you can. Or be flexible. When you have flexibility with your time, you can find great deals. So at one point I had to zigzag a bit around the world to meet like my mom in Israel. I was in Southeast Asia, but I found a flight that was like, I don't know, $300 to get from Kuala Lumpur to Tel Aviv. And so you can find amazing deals out there if you have the flexibility. So yeah, those two were big. And then the homestays, they're always cheaper. And then Southeast Asia is a big one too. Like you can start in Southeast Asia and you'll see that, which is what happened to me after a year. I had so much money still. And then luckily I had a good tax refund from owning a place back in the US that this allowed me to extend it for another year. But again, remember that I was only spending about $18,000 a year. And that was with like living it up with my experiences, as I mentioned. I did not compromise on the things that I really wanted to do. So to give you an example, in China, Beijing, I want to see the Great Wall of China. Instead of doing the $40 tour that everybody and their mother does, I wanted to find an experience where I could camp in one of the towers in one of the more remote areas of the wall. And so I had to pay an extra $200 for that. But to me, that was worth it. So yeah, definitely find ways where you don't care to spend that much money so that you can spend it where it really matters to you.
Absolutely. Great thoughts. Okay. So one last tour guide question. Give us like a minute overline top view of your current travel guide job.
Okay. Yeah. So when I came back, I actually went back to my corporate job just to make money quickly and to see if I liked it or not. I decided, nope, this is not for me. I want a job where I can work directly with people, be out on the road, learn constantly. So that's when I decided to get certified as an ITMI tour director guide. So at the same time, I applied for a job with G Adventures, and based on my experience in the outdoors and travel, they gave it to me right away. And so last summer I did that for the whole summer and fall season. They offered for me to come back this year, but then I got an offer from Adventures by Disney, which has been put on hold because I was supposed to start right as social distancing was beginning. So yeah, so far I've been focusing on freelancing with different companies to do tour designing and doing other things on the side. But yeah, so once you try the tour directing thing, if you love being with people, you're just not going back, until you get tired of just running around. I'm sure I'll get tired eventually, but right now I hope to keep going with it.
Absolutely. Great. Thank you. Okay, guys, I'm so sorry. We do have to hop off, but if you have more questions, a lot more questions, reach out to Catalina at Cata in the World on all her social media. 2 quick things for next week. We have visiting Bhutan on Tuesday, the 21st, what to know before you go. And on Thursday, the 23rd, we have Travis, freelance travel writing in the age of coronavirus. So make sure to check out our events. And if you'd like to support Nomadic Matt and the Nomadic Network, we have a Patreon as well. So we'll link that in the chat here. But thank you, Catalina. That was incredibly inspiring. And so many people are going to be reaching out to you with questions.
Sure.
And
Thank you guys for coming.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you
Nomadic
so
Network.
much, everyone. And hope to see you at our future events. And Erica, anything else that did I miss? Okay.
All good.
All right. Thank you
guys.
again. Bye, everyone.
Go travel. Go travel. Well, not right
Yes.
now, but plan for
Yeah,
later.
not now.
Keep planning. Keep the dream alive.
Bye.